So today we'll be discussing something about the power of divine name. We have discussed this subject many a time here. But when it comes to spiritual subjects, our memory is short, and also to develop faith or Shraddha is not easy. We have heard so many sages and saints saying that for this age, for Kali Yuga, the best spiritual practice or sadhana is repetition of God's name. There cannot be any other spiritual practice which is as easy as this. So in other yugas, you had to do hard spiritual sadhana to win the grace of the Lord. But in this age, in Kali Yuga, we all have this advantage of winning the grace of the Lord with least effort, and that too, just repetition of His name is sufficient. He would be immensely pleased. So, but we don't do that, right? Not only you, the people outside, even the spiritual practitioner also, many a time they entertain this doubt whether the Lord's name is really that powerful. If you are really convinced on the potency of the Lord's name, then you should be chanting His name all the time. The very fact that you don't derive that much of delight, derive that much of joy chanting the name of the Lord is a proof that you are not totally convinced with the efficacy and power of the divine name. That means the faith is yet to come into you. All the people who had developed true faith, how they behaved, they just chanted His name with every breath. They chanted, if you just see the mystics this country has produced. They used to take soul delight in that only, repetition of God's name. So in the beginning, actually, it takes time for every one of us to develop faith and also to relish repetition of God's name. You must enjoy doing that act. You must enjoy doing that practice. How does that happen? Yeah, in the beginning you have to struggle. You have to pray. When devotee comes to Sri Ramakrishna and asks him, that's fine actually. Repetition of God's name actually is the best sadhana. But I don't relish doing it, he said. I don't derive any joy doing it. So to do mechanically, to force my mind all the time to repeat God's name is the difficulty. And then Sri Ramakrishna said, actually, then you pray to the divine. Oh Lord, I want to repeat your name, but my mind is not inclined towards that. I don't relish repetition of your name. So you just pray to the divine and then keep practicing it. Afterwards you will get the real taste of it. Once you get the real taste of it, when you learn to repeat God's name with love, that is the best of the sadhana. The more you repeat and the more you love repeating that, doing that. And slowly things will happen. You will have divine visions and finally you will get nirvana, the highest fruit that you can ever aspire, having come here as a human being. So that much we can attain through this simple practice of repetition of God's name. They say, our scriptures say, God's name is more powerful than God. So how can that be? How the name can be more powerful than God? I think we have discussed this story recently only, but still I would like to. So it's not part of any scripture. It has come as a kind of legend. No, but all these things are created, not just for the sake of fun, just to entertain us, but just to infuse that real faith in the power of the divine name in us. So there are many variants of this story. So Swamiji, from where you have brought this story, don't ask me. There is no authentic source. It's just a part of a legend. So once in the court of Rama, all the sages had gathered. They wanted to discuss a point. What was the point? What was the topic of discussion for the day? who is powerful, whether God is powerful or his name is powerful. So every sage said, how can that be? God is more powerful, obviously. Name actually refers to God. So God is more powerful than his name. But Narada, he disputed that. He said that God's name is more powerful than God. Then they all asked him to prove that. Narada has agreed, I will prove at the right point of time. So the time rolled on. One day, Vishwamitra went to the court of the king of Kashi. So, kings in those days, not all, so much of luxury was available. So he was busy entertaining himself with a dance program. The damsels were dancing and the king was, enjoying that. He did not pay attention to Vishwamitra. He thought actually he was a kind of intruder, disturbing his, act of joy. So he did not pay enough respect to Vishwamitra. Normally any sage, if the sage would go to the king's court in those days, they would offer argya and padhya and give a simhasana, make them sit properly, and then actually they will bow at their feet, and all such, proper receiving would be there. But this king is completely immersed and engrossed in entertaining himself with the dance program. Did not pay enough attention to Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra, would get annoyed easily, and he got terribly annoyed. How dare this king to disrespect a sage of my caliber? So he goes to Rama and he says that, you must behead that king of Kashi. He insulted me. He did not receive me well. Rama, his disciple, so Guru Agnya, Guru wanted the king of Kashi to be killed. Rama actually promises, okay, I'll do that. So now the king of Kashi came to know, he knew the power of Rama. Rama is invincible. So death is sure for him. So thinking that, he was highly distressed. So at that point of time, Narada happened to, because he had to prove his point that God's name is more powerful than God. Narada happened to visit the king of Kashi. When he came to know of the distress of Kashi's king, then Kashi's king fell at Narada's feet and wanted a solution for this problem. I would be killed by Rama. Actually, there is no force in this universe which can oppose Rama. So who will protect me? Who will save me? He was crestfallen and dejected and weeping. And then Narada said, don't worry. Go and seek the protection of Anjana Devi, the mother of Anjaneya, Hanuman. So Kashi king runs straight to Anjana Devi and falls at her feet. And you have to provide refuge to me at your feet. You must protect me. You tell me what I have to do. You tell me first your problem, Anjana Devi says. No. Only when you say that I will protect you, then I will tell my problem. Yes, she agrees. Okay, I will extend my protection to you. You are sought refuge at my feet. Then he says that actually Rama will kill me. So I have not received Vishwamitra properly. So the sage got annoyed. So he asked Rama to kill me, and Rama will be coming to kill me. Then Anjana Devi she called her son Hanuman and says, this man has come to seek our protection. I have promised him protection and we must protect him now. So you must do my bidding. Then Hanuman said, mother, you tell me whatever you want me to do, I will do. So then she breaks the news for Hanuman that actually Rama is going to come to kill him. But now you have to fight with Rama and save his life. Hanuman was stunned. Rama is actually his chosen deity. He has been worshipping all through his life. So now the battle between Ramanjaneya Yuddha, battle between Hanuman and Rama. So Hanuman said, don't worry, I will protect you. You just be behind me. And Rama comes there to kill Kashi's king. And Hanuman says that he has sought protection, refuge with my mother, and I have given word to my mother that I will protect him. Then I will have to keep my word, O Rama. So Rama said, you Hanuman, you come away. I have to kill this king of Kashi. I have given word to my guru Vishwamitra. So I have to do the bidding of my guru. Hanuman says, I have to do the bidding of my mother, Anjana Devi. So I have no option. I have to protect him. Then Rama actually shoots his arrows. Then otherwise I will have to kill you also, Hanuman, he says. Then, oh Lord, welcome. But as long as there is a life in me, I have to protect this man, king of Kashi, as I have promised to my mother that I will protect him. Then Rama shoots his arrows, and Hanuman, he keeps repeating God's name, Rama, Rama, Rama. Sri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. So, lo, a miracle happened. All Rama's arrows, they circumambulate Hanuman and come back and fall in the quiver of Rama. So every arrow that Rama had shot became ineffective in front of Hanuman's chanting of Ramanama. Ultimately, Rama actually shot Brahmastra, but that Brahmastra also became ineffective. Rama was surprised. What Hanuman was doing, he was just chanting Ramanama, that's all. And then Narada comes, at the time Vishwamitra also comes. So, seeing all this, Vishwamitra, that I am responsible for fight between Hanuman and Rama, so he becomes, mellowed down, he becomes soft. And Hanuman says to Kashi king, you go and fall at the feet of Vishwamitra and seek his forgiveness. So Kashi king goes and falls at the feet of Vishwamitra. And now Vishwamitra forgives him, the battle stops there. But now Narada says that now I want to prove this to you that actually God's name is more powerful than God. It's just not told as a story, but name of the Lord is more powerful. You may ask actually what is the science behind it. Rama, though is an incarnation, Krishna an incarnation, they came in person, right? But when you utter the name Rama or Krishna, you know that Rama refers to that supreme consciousness which is the source of the universe. As Vivekananda says about Sri Ramakrishna, he is a mighty wave from that ocean of consciousness. Okay, Sri Ramakrishna, though he had the highest manifestation of divine from him, how much actually the divine can manifest through a human form? How much actually this form can hold? When you talk about the Lord, you are talking about that force or that intelligence which has created this universe, right? So, a force or intelligence that has created a universe of this magnitude, if it has to manifest through a human personality, through a human person, how much of it can be manifest? A little, right? That if all the force and all the power that the force has, if it were to manifest through a human form, the form would break into pieces in no time. And Sri Ramakrishna's body also broken like that because the unrush of the spiritual current was so strong. When he was getting into that bhava samadhi frequently, Sri Ramakrishna himself had said, had it been a normal body, a body of impurity, it would break into pieces in no time. To digest that level of awakening, ordinary human beings cannot digest, it requires great purity. So that much of power. People are talking about Kundalini Awakening, not knowing what it means, to have the Kundalini awakened. When you're talking about Kundalini, you're talking about that primordial energy which has created this universe, which is there in you in a coiled up form. You don't actually mess with that. We have all the desires, worldly desires in the mind, right? And people are repeating mantras, sometimes actually with great intensity, to acquire psychic powers and also to have the Kundalini awakened. You should not do that. Parallelly, you must develop vairagya. Parallelly, you must develop dispassion. You must see, you must ensure that God is actually the only thing that you seek from the world. It may take time. But you have to have the patience. You have to wait. If God is the only thing that you need from the world, and that is the sole objective in life, then all other desires automatically will drop off as you keep repeating God's name. But today most people are repeating God's name, but at the same time parallelly we cultivate all the desires. But that is not the way. So if you want to have your desires satisfied and you want the divine intervention, you just pray, that is sufficient. You don't have to do actually mantra, and that too when there is a bija mantra in them. And that's the reason when our gurus initiate, they ask us actually, have only desire. Try to slowly weed out actually all the worldly desires and have the only desire to know the truth, to have God vision, that's all. Slowly you cultivate it. Take your own time, but that should be done. Develop vairagya, because that is the only thing to be sought. All other things actually, yogakshema, Lord will take care of. Whatever that we need actually, the minimum things, we don't have to struggle so much, but unfortunately the modern society thinks that providing for one's physical necessities actually has become the sole objective of life. So God's name is more powerful in that sense, because when you utter name, you are referring to that supreme consciousness from which actually incarnations had come in tens and hundreds probably. Bhagavata says there are so many incarnations. So from that ocean of consciousness, these incarnations are great waves. We are small waves, probably wavelets. An incarnation, an individual of Sri Ramakrishna's spiritual caliber, a mighty wave, and we are small waves. That's the only difference. So, but they are all waves only. But the infinite ocean is something different. That is Brahman, that is consciousness, that is all providing. So, when you utter God's name, you mean to that, you are referring to that power, that intelligence, which actually is all providing and which has actually conceived this universe. of phenomenal magnitude. And that's why actually probably God's name is more powerful than God. Because when we talk about God, we talk about personal God mostly. Devotees, when we talk about God, we talk about personal God. My Rama, my Krishna, my Ramakrishna. Okay, my Shiva. You're talking about personal God. So when you utter name, actually, it refers to that impersonal, supreme Brahman. Probably for that reason, God's name is more powerful. Whether you are aware or we are not aware, when you utter God or you utter the name of God, with the awareness that I have uttered the name of God, whether you are aware of the act, the real power of your act, but the power or the intelligence which knows, okay, the name which that refers to Brahman, that Brahman actually knows actually whom, the name of whom actually you are repeating. And so the grace of that Brahman, the attention of that Brahman comes to you automatically. Whether you are aware or we are not aware, most of the times we do it casually, but when you do it with love, the attention of that supreme intelligence, the attention of the supreme consciousness, which is actually guiding the destinies of all the beings in the world, will come towards you. The attention will turn towards you. That's the reason the divine name is actually more powerful than the divine. In Bhagavata also we have the story of Ajamila that also we have discussed here many times. Ajamila is a confirmed sinner. All life he did only sinful acts. Just before breathing his last, he just uttered Narayana. That Narayana also he didn't mean God, right? So he meant actually his fourth son. He was so deeply attached to his fourth son. Before breathing his last, he uttered the name of his fourth son. He called out to him, "Oh Narayana, my fourth son, you please come to me." Because he did so much of sinful acts, Yama's emissaries came to take his soul to Naraka, to hell. At the same time, Vishnu's emissaries also appeared there. And the emissaries of Yama got confused. How this person is eligible for Vaikuntha and Vishnu's emissaries have come to take his soul? And they went back. Vishnu's emissaries said, "This man deserves Vaikuntha, not hell." So they were perplexed, they were confused. And they go back to Yama and says that man had done so many sinful acts all through his life. At the time of death, actually, before breathing his last, he uttered God's name once. But Narayana he uttered, but he didn't mean actually God, the Almighty Lord, but he meant only his son, fourth son. How actually he deserves Vaikuntha Vasa? They ask actually their boss, Yama. Then Yama gives the explanation. Sankethyam parihasyam va stobam helanameva va. Vaikuntha nama grahanam ashesha agaharam. Iduhu. Parihasyam, even in jest, right? In jest means actually you are cutting a joke, but you utter divine name. Parihasyam, helanameva. Sanketyam means suppose you say name, right? That's why in our culture, in India, we give divine names to our children. Especially if I have to repeat God's name, I have to do japa, it is difficult for me. So we actually, wisely, we give divine names to our children, or people who are very dear to us. And whenever you are calling out to that individual, you are actually uttering God's name, right? So how many times we will be uttering God's name in our lifetime? That's why this is spiritual land. In other countries, they are names. They also have names. But if you ask them what is the meaning of your name, what necessity is there for a name to have a meaning? Those names, they don't have any meaning. But in Indian culture, any name you just take, for example, the names invariably refer to the divine. Whether it's Krishna, Rama, Shiva, any name you just take. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of names we have, all are divine names. Because God has infinite attributes, not one attribute. So all those attributes actually we have put the form of a name, and through those attributes actually we call out to the Lord, and we call out our children, our people who are related to us by giving them their names. And whenever you call that individual by that name, you are actually calling out to divine himself, because that name actually refers to the divine. In fact, actually we are also divine because we are basically soul, basically consciousness. We have the body and mind. They are all the appendages. They are all just adjuncts. But the reality of a personality is consciousness. The reality of a being is God only. So we give these names to our people, Sanketyam technically. So that name calling out. So we will be chanting that name hundreds and thousands of times, because anyway we are worldly. So to take time separately and to repeat God's name, to do japa, we are, of course, in 21st century, we are all very, very busy to repeat God's name. So I give this name to my son, my daughter, my brother and my sister, and they are all divine names. So whenever I call out to them, actually I am uttering God's name. In that way, actually you are doing japa every day. The punya of it actually will come to you. That's what Bhagavata says. So when the Ajamila said Narayana, so Vishnu's emissaries come to take him, and the Yama says to his uh, emissaries that actually God's name is so powerful. Whether you utter it consciously or unconsciously, so the fruit of the action of uttering the divine name comes to you, voluntarily or involuntarily, consciously or unconsciously. You can actually sanketyam, parihasyam va, stobam helanameva va. Parihasyam, and even in jest. Stobam means actually just to improvise the verses. So that's why actually, sometimes when you write poetry, it may be a secular thing, but in the end actually you want to put a divine name, just to improvise the lines. So because whenever you utter that poetry, when you chant that poetry, because God's name is there, that the benefit of uttering God's name will come to you. Stobam, that is called. Helanamevava, even in ridicule, if you utter God's name. Vaikunta nama grahanam ashesha agaharam viduhu. So it will actually expiate you from all the sins. So that is the easiest sadhana that is available to us in this age. Sri Ramakrishna quotes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also talks of the efficacy of divine name. He used to go and actually ask everybody actually utter God's name, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Recently only we celebrated the birthday. The only sadhana he advocated, no other sadhana. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, that's enough. Utter the name of Hari. He would himself burst into ecstasy and chanting Krishna's name. And so everybody can do it. Children can do it, women can do it, old people can do it. It's so easy. Meditation not everybody can do actually. You need a strong body, right? Even to sit erect actually is not that easy for long periods of time. How much of tapas and how much of austerities we can practice. And just see on Puranas actually Dhruva what kind of tapasya he had done and what kind of tapasya Markandeya had done. So we can't do that kind of tapas and penance even for a few days in these days. Actually, our bodies are not that strong for various reasons, because of the impurity in the mind, impurity on food, and impurity in environment, in the air that we breathe today. For various reasons, we are not as strong as our ancestors were, because they, in terms of moral life also, they had a high degree of morality. There was more dharma. The dharma also declines. The society becomes weak. Individuals become weak. People become weak. God knows that we can't do that hard disciplines. And that's the reason actually for Kali Yuga, he has given this beautiful sadhana of repetition of his name. It's equally potent and very efficacious. The Bhagavata, there is this sloka actually. Krute yadhyayato Vishnum. Krute yadhyayato Vishnum. Tretayam yajato makaihi. Dvapare paricharyataha kalau tad harikirtanat. In the Kruta age, Kruta, Treta, Dvapara and Kali, we know. All these 4 yugas. In the Kruta Yuga, they used to meditate on Lord's form. They were not doing any rituals. They were not doing any other kind of service. They were not even repeating God's name, because they were so pure. As soon as they would sit in their meditation posture and close their eyes, they would get into high states of meditation. They would go deep into meditation. Krute yadhyayato Vishnuhu. Just through meditating on Vishnu, actually, they used to attain to the highest Brahman consciousness. Tretayam yajato makaihi. In Treta Yuga, they used to do sacrifices, right? Ashwamedha Yaga, Rajasuya Yaga, various kinds of yagas, yajnas, sacrifices they used to do, and they used to attain to the divine by performing sacrifices. Dvapare paricharyataha. So in Dvapara age, by serving the Lord and by serving holy people used to attain to the highest Brahman consciousness. Kalau tad harikirtanad. In the age Kali, in this age, in present age, just by repeating God's name, you will get to that highest state of Brahman. You will attain Nirvana, provided you have the faith. So keep repeating God's name as much as you can. There is a story in the Mahabharata. It's a very long story. I will cut it short for you. The power of japa, the power of repetition of God's name, what fruit it will bring and how powerful it is. It is there, it comes in the Shanti Parva of Mahabharata. Yudhishthira asked, he wanted to know the efficacy of japa, efficacy of repetition of God's name, what fruit it brings. He asked Bhishma. Then the Shantanava, he tells Yudhishthira, yes, it's very powerful. And Bhishma in Shanti Parva, through a old story which was actually older than what they were talking about, something which had happened before that time. he would bring that story and he would try to enlighten Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pandavas. So there was an ascetic by name Kaushika. He was the son of Pippalada. He had done this japa sadhana, repetition of God's name, for 1,000 years. So how a man lives for 1,000 years, you don't ask me that question. Because their time scale was different, our time scale was different. Maybe the year that, which is year 365 days for us, in those days probably it ran like 100 years for them. We don't know. This is relative, right? Time is relative. So he did that penance for 1,000 years. Probably he must have repeated Gayatri Mantra. So Mother Savitri, Goddess Savitri appeared before him. And she said that, so your Japasadhana has fructified. So you are now eligible for higher spheres, the best of the lokas that are available. Oh my child, so please be prepared to go to those lokas. Or just ask whatever you want to ask. Then he said, he didn't seek anything. The Kaushika asks Mother Savitri that, so may my mind be more devoted to japa, he said. May I be more steadfast in my japa sadhana. Whereas the goddess had appeared before him and asked him actually to seek a boon, to actually go to the higher spheres. But he refused to go to the higher sphere and he says, may I become more steadfast in my sadhana. And he wanted to do more sadhana. So she said, Tatastu, as you wish. And then he went on repeating God's name for another 100 years. And now actually Dharma Devata appeared. Because whatever he wanted to attain by repeating God's name, actually he has attained in the way that he has got. And Dharma Devata comes and tells him, now actually you are eligible for the highest sphere, eligible for Swarga. You please drop your body and get prepared to go to that highest realm. And he says that this body has helped me all these years when I was uttering God's name. It has cooperated with me. So I don't want to drop this body and mind. I wanted to keep it for myself. So I don't want to go to the higher spheres, she said. Dharma Devata says that, oh my child, you don't seem to understand this, because compared to the present existence that I am promising is very superior and it's too high. And so everybody, if somebody does actually japa, there is a prayojana actually. So we expect some fruit, right? We want some result. Why do we repeat God's name? We want to attain to God. So whatever the desire that you had in your mind, that would be fulfilled now. So I am actually offering you that fulfillment. I am offering you the fruit of the japa that you had performed. But why you refuse that? You drop the body and mind and attain to that highest sphere. But Kaushika refuses. Then Dharma Devata says actually, okay, Yama, time, and others actually, and Murtyu Devata, they will come and enter into a conversation in your presence, then you will understand better. You may not agree to my proposal, but when they come, actually you will understand. And Yama comes and congratulates him. You have done excellent japa sadhana, you have done excellent repetition of God's name for these many years. And so, they are eligible for Swargavasa, for heaven. So, give up the body and then please go to the highest realm. Then he says, Yama congratulates him, but still actually Kaushika was not moved. And then time comes in front of him. Time also congratulates him and says that, O Kaushika, O great tapasvi, O ascetic among ascetics, O greatest of the ascetics. So please actually deign to drop this body, agree to drop this body and come to heaven. But still he was unwilling. Then Mrityu Devata comes actually. Prompted by time, I want to take away your life. The goddess of death comes and says that I want to take away your life. So see, we need to understand that when actually we die, goddess of death doesn't come and say that I will take your life. Right? Simply quietly she does her business without our knowledge. But there, because Kaushika had done such extraordinary penance, out of reverence and respect, the goddess of death is coming. And now your Ayurdhaya is over, time is over. You please agree to drop the body. She was requesting him. She was pleading with him. Just the way Savitri won her husband's life back from Yama. Why did Yama appear before Savitri? In front of us he doesn't appear, forcefully drags our soul out. But because she was so pure, and because she was Pativrata, and also Satyavan actually was such a great man of truth, Yama had appeared in physical form, the god of death, in front of Savitri. So here also, Mrityu Devata was pleading with Kaushika, agree to leave the body. She can't by force actually drag the soul out when actually they are men of exceptional caliber, spiritual caliber. So he says then, no, I am not interested to drop the body because this body has cooperated with me, has helped me to repeat God's name for these many years. And then actually Ikshvaku comes there, the king of the country. Ikshvaku was on a pilgrimage He was on a pilgrimage. He just accidentally happened to come to Kaushika, and Kaushika receives him because of the king of the land. Well, and asked the king, King, you can ask some gift from me. Whatever that is in my means, I will give. Kaushika himself was an ascetic actually, but he asked the king to seek some boon from him. Some gift you ask of me, and I shall give you. And Ikshvaku says, I am king actually. We are given to giving, but we are not given to accepting. I am already king actually. I don't accept gifts, I give gifts. And the Kaushika says that maybe, but actually you accept a gift from me because you are my guest. So if you don't want to take gifts, if you are not in the habit of taking gifts, at least accept some gift as part of my worshipping the guest, because you are my guest. As part of my worshipping the guest, I will offer you a gift. Please accept the gift. So when Kaushika insisted so much on insisted on Ikshvaku expecting a gift, Ikshvaku, okay. Then finally your fruit of your japa sadhana, fruit of your all the spiritual merit that you have acquired till now by repetition of God's name, you give it to me. Then Kaushika says, whether it is half or full, whatever the spiritual merit that I have acquired by repeating God's name all these years, I pass it on to you. Okay, he said. Then Ikshvaku puts a condition. I am ready to take it, but what is the fruit of that? What fruit did you gain by repeating God's name all these years? And Kaushika says, I don't know. I just went about repeating God's name. What is the fruit of my japasadhana? I myself do not know. I am not interested in that. But whatever may be that fruit, I am saying that I will give it to you. Okay? You just wanted that, you take it. Now Ikshvaku says, how can I take the fruit of it? Unless you know what is the fruit, what is the gift. You are telling me that you take the gift. Okay? But I don't know what is that gift. Why shall I accept and how can I accept? Then Kaushika says, what is the need to know whatever the merit that I have accrued by the repetition of God's name all these years, that I pass it on to you. But Ikshvaku says, I won't accept it unless I know what it is. Then Kaushika says that you can't go back on your word like this. You are Ikshvaku. You are a great king. You said that you would accept a gift from me. And now actually on frivolous ground you are saying that I won't take it because let me know the fruit of it. No, you must accept it. You see, the conversation was going on like this. Then Yama intervenes, then Dharma Devata, this time intervenes, and Mrityu Devata intervene. They said, you please, both of them are in competition with each other. So Ikshvaku says, actually, I won't accept it unless I know what the fruit of your spiritual sadhana. And now Kaushika says that you have promised, you said that you would take and you must take. The competition in giving, right? But Ikshvaku also doesn't want to take it that easily. So competition in giving, they want to give both of them. And then these three devatas, Yama, time and also Mrityu Devata, goddess of death, they say, you please try to come to an agreement. So the merit of actually the sadhana, merit of charity, merit of giving gift to Kaushika and merit of practicing truthfulness should come to Ikshvaku. Both of you gain that. So, but in just when they were conversing like that, two people with terrible, the ugly form appeared before them. It was Kama and Krodha, they revealed their identity afterwards. So they say, Ikshvaku, so you have to solve our problem, O king. You alone are capable of doing this. We had a problem between us. What is the problem? Ikshvaku asked. Then actually the two terrible forms went about narrating that. What is that? So they said this man had done some charity. What was that charity? He had given so many cows to so many pious people. And he had acquired some merit out of that. So I went to him and I asked for the merit to be given to me, and he had agreed and he has given it to me. And the second man, the man who has taken the spiritual merit of that man who has actually distributed cows, now what he had done, he purchased 2 more cows and gave it to one pious person. And the merit that he had accrued, by giving that charitable act, I wanted to give it to him, first man. The first man has agreed, okay, I will take. You have taken my spiritual merits and you wanted to give something back to me, okay, I will take. But he promised that he would take, but now he is dodging, he is not taking. So he promised that he would take the merit of the 2 cows that I had given to the pious man, but he is not taking. So that was the fight that was going on between them. And now you solve the problem. So then now Kaushika intervenes at this point of time. He says, Ikshvaku, you just see, the first man, in the beginning he said that he would take. He would accept the merit of the spiritual, that he had accrued by giving these cows to a pious man, but now it's still going back on his word. So it is like reneging on one's own promise, going back on your own word. So this is untruthfulness. So if you don't accept the merit of my spiritual sadhana, Kaushika says, I will pronounce a curse on you. Then Ikshvaku was frightened now. He was terrified. The Kaushika says that I would, okay, if you don't accept my gift, I will pronounce a curse upon you. Then Ikshvaku agrees, okay, I will take it. But Ikshvaku pleads with Kaushika. So I also want to give something to you. I just don't want to take anything without giving something in return. So please accept the gift of the fruit of spiritual merit that I have accrued by doing so many sacrifices. Because Ikshvaku had performed so many sacrifices, so many Ashwamedha sacrifices, so many Raja Yoga sacrifices, Rajasuya Yaga sacrifices, and so many other yajnas he had performed. All the merit that I have accrued in my life by doing all these sacrifices, I will give it to you. In return, as you have already promised that you will give me the fruit of your japasadhana, repetition of God's name, that I will take that. But still actually Kaushika was unyielding, even at this point of time. And then actually these two terrible forms, they reveal their form, their true nature. They say we are Kama and Krodha, we try to tempt you, but actually you are not succumb to temptation. But you need to understand one salient feature and wonderful thing, the wonderful truth. So there is the sense of agency itself is wrong. Ikshvaku is thinking that actually he was receiving and Kaushika was thinking that he was giving. It was God actually who gives, it was God actually who receives. Having this sense of agency that I am the giver and you are receiving. But they are actually both competing to give to each other. But today in our Kali Yuga we want to grab, we don't want to give, but they are in competition with each other in giving. And that was also wrong, they said. The sense of agency that you have, that I am giving, is wrong. And also the other person to have the identity that I am receiving is also wrong. It is God who gives, it is God who receives. Highest Advaita they bring. Suddenly they bring the highest Advaita. It's God who gives and it's God who receives. The receiver is God and also the giver is God. So this Kama and Krodha which appeared in those terrible forms and actually enlightened that. And then actually the Swarga Devata appears before them. The Mahabharata and Yoga Vasha, the problem is there is story within story and story within story. So by the time you come to the end of the story, you forget actually first story. That's why it's very difficult to get it. You have to read it twice or thrice. So now the Swarga Devata appeared before them and Swarga Devata says again, so you come to an agreement between you and the spiritual merit will come to both of you equally. Then at last Kaushika agrees to accept the merit that Ikshvaku has gained by doing so many sacrifices, because you are requesting me in the presence of so many people. There was Yama, there was goddess of death actually, there was time, and there was also Swarga Devata, the goddess of heaven. These many people, in front of these many people, you are requesting me, so I accept this gift from you. O Ikshvaku, saying that Kaushika accepts the gift of the spiritual merit that he has accrued by doing the sacrifices. And now just you see, and now Kaushika agrees to give up his body. The first Dharmadevata came and told him actually, give up the body and come to Swarga. Now in deep meditation, he starts repeating God's name, he goes into deep meditation. Now the Apsarasas, they come and all these celestial beings, Gandharvas, Yakshas and Kinnaras, they start dancing around them because seeing the sacrificing spirit of both Ikshvaku and also Kaushika, and flower petals were showered on them. So now actually he goes into deep meditation. And he concentrates his pranas on actually here on the Brukuti, and slowly he raises, this consciousness, and he allows the soul to depart through the Brahmarandhra, through the orifice in the crown. Brahmarandhra we say, orifice in the crown. Because of the repetition of God's name for these many years, he had got that power to give up the body at will, Yogis, they don't die just like that. They actually drag the soul out, in the sense that because they just drop the body on their own accord. Mrityu or the death will not have any sway over that. That's why actually if you want to transcend death, repeat God's name, they say. So Mrityu Devata will be at, at a distance. You can keep Mrityu Devata at bay by repetition of God's name. So on his own will, the Kaushika, he closes his eyes, goes into deep meditation, and a luminous light actually comes out of his being. And Brahma appears there actually, seeing the light. Brahma appears and Brahma invites him, you just enter into my face. And Kaushika's soul enters into Brahmaloka in front of all the celestials. And then afterwards, Ikshvaku also, he just sits in meditation and he also leaves the body the way Kaushika had left the body. Because of the practicing of those many yajnas, he also had acquired the power to give up the body on his own. So a bright light comes out of the body of Ikshvaku, and that also enters into the mouth of Brahma, and he also attains to the highest of sphere. And these are all the things which we hear in this age, actually, mere stories, but we are nowhere. Those people actually, in terms of dharma, in terms of spiritual sadhana, our ancestors, the kind of strength that they had, the kind of divinity that they could manifest through the person, of course, actually, even to believe in these days. But there are all the stories of Mahabharata. There is no reason for you to disbelieve. They are not actually written by ordinary people. God himself had written those scriptures. Men of such exceptional spiritual caliber existed on this soil, actually, in India. We had produced such men in hundreds and thousands. So they left the bodies and they all attained to Brahmaloka, the highest of sphere. Today, actually, the kind of body consciousness that we have, we want to hold on to. The body. In 80 or 85, we are in an ventilator, we are on ICU, but still the craving for life, it doesn't go. Swamiji in Song of the Sannyasini says, thirst for life forever quench, it drags from birth to death and death to birth. You have to come out of this transmigratory cycle. This is samsara. Okay, the samsara vyadhi, they say, bhava roga. So what is the solution to the samsara vyadhi, bhava roga? It's a repetition of God's name. Shiva iti aksharadvayam. Shiva, just 2 letters. Enough, actually. Swami says, beautifully in one of his letters, 9th volume, it comes from Vivekananda. So our women, actually, so in the midst of all the daily chores, if they just repeat Shiva Shiva, Hara Hara, in between, that's good enough sadhana, he says, for this age. They will attain to nirvana, they will attain to moksha. That will please the Lord. So whole day you don't have to repeat God's name, but if you can do it, it's fine. But even if you can't do that, in the midst of your daily chores, in the midst of all your responsibilities and duties, God knows actually how burdened we are. So if you just make it a point to repeat God's name now and then, that is sadhana good enough for you to help you get in mukti. In this Kali Yuga, that advantage is there. At the least sadhana, we gain the highest of the fruit. But we should not actually let go that concession that God has given us. So these are all the stories that come to us. Sri Ramakrishna also again and again insists, for Kali Yuga, Naradhiya Bhakti. So for Kali Yuga, repetition of God's name is alone sufficient, that will give you the highest fruit. But he says, Sri Ramakrishna says that you must utter God's name with love, with bhava. Right? As I said, in the beginning, actually, it might become a little mechanical, but as you keep doing it, if you can infuse bhava into that, and that will give you the highest fruit. And so, we have to taste the bliss that comes when we utter God's name. There is joy in that. So, because nowadays we want immediate result for anything. So, we don't have the patience to wait. Okay, this generation, actually, we have the least patience. So, for even to attain success in worldly life also, you have to work steadfastly towards some goal, right? Overnight, nobody will become successful. Step by step, actually, you have to go. In the same way, in spiritual life also, as you keep repeating God's name, your mind becomes purer and purer and purer, and as it becomes purified, and you will attain to that higher realms and higher visions also will come, but you need to have faith. This is the simplest sadhana that is available for us. The potency of the divine name. There are so many stories actually explaining us the greatness of the divine name in our scriptures. So in the Mahabharata we have, in Ramayana we have, in other Puranas actually we have these stories. If you just see some of the spiritual seekers who had attained to divine realization, mystics like in the south we have this devotional mystics. In Telugu mystics we have Annamacharya, we have Bhakta Ramadas, we have Tyagaraja. In Karnataka when you go Kanakadas and Purandaradasa. In Tamil Nadu we have this Nayanmars and Alvas. Just what was the sadhana that they had adopted? Just repetition of God's name, that's all. So after a certain period of time, they took full delight in repeating God's name, and that helped them actually attain to the highest divine realization. And particularly for householders, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa says actually, in Kali Yuga, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga are not that easy. Bhakti Yoga is the easiest. The Bhagavata also, it is said actually, Etavaneva lokesmin pumso dharmaha param smutaha. Pumsa actually is man. For an individual, what is the highest dharma for this age? Etavaneva lokesmin. What is the supreme Purushartha, what is the supreme objective, supreme dharma actually. So, Bhakti Yoge Bhagavati, Bhakti Yoge Bhagavati. So, through Bhakti Yoga, actually, you have to try to reach God. Tan Nama Sravanadibihi. Bhakti Yoge Bhagavati Tan Nama Sravanadibihi. In the Bhagavad Gita, also, we have this beautiful sloka where Krishna says, Apichet Suduracharo Bhajate Mam Ananya Bhak Sadureva Samantavya Samyak Vyavasito Hi Saha. Apiche Suduracharo, even if an individual is a confirmed sinner, Bhajate Mam Ananya Bhak, whoever actually repeats me or sings my praises steadfastly, Sadureva Samantavyaha, he must be deemed a good person, a righteous person. Samyak Vyavasito Hi Saha, as the individual is rightly resolved. Now he has come to the right understanding that repetition of God's name actually will expiate all my sins, will help me to purify myself. The individual has understood that. That's good enough. The Lord is saying that. He is a confirmed sinner. He is a sinner, still he is given to sinful tendencies. Those tendencies keep manifesting in him time and again, now and then again. It doesn't matter. But you don't have to get disheartened. So many people say, I started repeating God's name, but still actually I keep indulging in these acts. Okay, my mind actually, getting attracted to the wrong side of life. So negative things of life. No, you don't have to get disheartened. You just cultivate love for God. Parallelly, sometimes it will happen. The mind actually will be tossed between good and bad. So-called good and bad. Actually, there's nothing absolutely bad and there's nothing absolutely good in this world. And so you'll be tossed between these two, but you should not give up your effort. You should not give up your endeavor. You should not lose faith in the efficacy of divine name. The other day we celebrated Swami Yoganandaji's birthday. Yoganandaji goes to Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and he says, this lust, kama, is troubling him a lot. What should I do? And Sri Ramakrishna says, repeat God's name. Then he had developed doubt. What doubt? So many people are repeating God's name, but are they able to conquer the kama? Is it that easy? He has told something casually, he thought. And an Hatha Yogi comes to Dakshineshwar by name Narayana. So this Yogananda starts going to that Hatha Yogi because he wanted to learn some techniques. What techniques Sri Ramakrishna suggested, he did not like. He thought actually it would not be that efficacious because so many people are repeating God's name, but still they struggle with these desires. So why would that happen if God's name is so powerful? And Sri Ramakrishna goes to him and says, he brings him back from that Narayana Hatha Yogi. See, those Hatha Yoga practices will not help you much. Repeat God's name with faith, it will work. And Sri Ramakrishna, when Sri Yogananda was going to that Narayana Hatha Yogi, Sri Ramakrishna says that you belong to this place. Okay? You don't have to go for that Hatha Yoga practices. You just repeat God's name, that is sufficient for you. And afterwards he develops faith and reaps the full effect of the repetition of God's name. Afterwards he becomes such a man of self-control. And Vivekananda certifies him. If there is a person among us, he was referring to all other direct disciples, who has conquered kama totally, this is this Yogananda. And thus Yogananda got married. He got married. And all that happened, all that became possible to him because of repetition of God's name. Sri Ramakrishna had said in the beginning he didn't develop faith. He thought it would not happen like that. But afterwards he developed faith and repeated it. And he had acquired the fruit of the japa, and he could conquer. It becomes possible. The only thing is, we are not, we don't have that much of Shraddha as yet. It will come. Shraddha also will come. There is nothing to worry. There is nothing to get disheartened. There is nothing to get discouraged. The Vakya, the sentences of Rishis actually are with truth. They won't utter an untruthful statement, right? We don't have faith, that is a different thing. But the statements of the scriptures are the statements of sages and Rishis who had experienced the truth for themselves. And they said actually, this is the sadhana that you need to do. And this is how you need to go about. And why should we disbelieve them? Because they were men of truth, women of truth. You have to have faith. The only problem is that we expect results too quickly, that's all. And then we give up the sadhana, nothing is happening. If Yogananda also had doubt. So many people are repeating God's name. Not many are repeating God's name. Not. Definitely not. Definitely not. Because we don't relish that as yet, and that's the reason, though it is told again and again, it requires some love for God. We will be able to do it joyfully only when we develop love for God. And as we discussed this in the last class, cultivating love for God actually is the highest objective of human life. Why? Because the Lord actually is the only eternal thing. All others are temporary and transient. So if you invest your emotion in any other direction, it will be wasting your emotion, that's all. If you that transform it into love and actually direct it to the Lord, because He is immortal and He is eternal, and we will attain to that eternal realm. So, but all that we have, in our being, the emotion that we have, the love that we have, we give to actually mundane things and people who are actually transient. Actually, no relationship is a permanent relationship, because all these relationships are based on physical body, and the physical body is not permanent. So, all the relationships are impermanent in that way. So, having come into this world, the only object, the only being that you ought to love is the divine. And somebody who truly loves God, he loves everybody also. Because everybody is a manifestation of the divine. Every individual is a form of God for such an individual. That's why you just see the people, for example, Holy Mother Sarada Devi, or Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Vivekananda, for the matter, any other sages and saints, how much of capacity they develop to love the whole universe. They will fall in love with the entire humanity. But now actually to love 3-4 people in our own family, we struggle so much, right? But that can be cultivated, that emotion can be cultivated. Once you start loving God, because God is there in every creature, the world will get transformed for you, the world will appear so beautiful. And Holy Mother Sarada said that everybody is my child. The Saradanandaji is my child, and this Amjad also, a robber. He was also my child, she said. My wicked child, my good child, she said. You just see the capacity of the woman to love even a thief, a robber. We just hate, right? We condemn such people in our society. We hate them. But whereas here, mother could develop that much. He is also my child, my wicked child, she said. So her motherly love actually had expanded to such an extent that she could embrace the whole universe with that. And that kind of love is possible to every human being for that matter. But only thing is we need to cultivate it. We need to cultivate it. There is no limit to that. It's infinite. That love is also infinite. God is infinite. The one of the definition that we give for God is actually love. Inexpressible, inexplicable essence of love is God, Vivekananda says. This is one of the definitions that Swamiji gives for God. Inexplicable, you can't explain. Inexpressible, you cannot express that way in words. That love is that's all. What is love? You cannot just utter it in words. LOV is only a word. It is a feeling that you understand it within. LOV will not make you understand that. You have to actually experience it for yourself. So expand it, expand it, expand it. That's the reason our rishis have suggested us, you try to love God. And then afterwards you will become such a love being. You will be able to love the whole universe. Okay, with that heart, your love heart, you will be able to embrace the whole mankind. What is that experience cannot be explained in words. Only the people who experience that understand that. Buddha had that kind of heart. Vivekananda could develop that kind of heart. This is possible for all of us actually. The thing is, love God. That's all. How to love God? Again the question is asked. You just tell that I am not able to love you. Oh God, please help me to love you. That's all. He will help you. So whatever the problem that you have, problem also you refer it to him. So if your chosen deity is Rama, let us say you read Ramayana and you will fall in love with Rama. If your chosen deity is Krishna, you read Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and you will fall in love with Krishna. If your chosen deity is Ramakrishna and you live his life and teachings, so you will fall in love with him over a period of time. And then afterwards, the repetition of his name will become so joyful for you and you will be a joyful being automatically. Right? Your chosen deity, but in our culture, so we are super rich, when it comes to spirituality. Our rishis and have sages, instead of creating one form, which will become monotonous, they have created multiple forms for the same Lord, and also they have developed so much of literature around that form. Rama is a vast story, right? Your Ramayana, what a big scriptures, 24,000 slokas. Bhagavata, 19,000 slokas. Shiva Purana, actually, thousands and thousands of slokas. Any form of the Lord you take, and so much of literature is available. Why they have given that literature? Why so many stories for that particular deity? You will fall in love with him. If you don't know anything about him, if he is not your hero, how you will fall in love with him? You read Bhagavatam and Krishna becomes hero and Krishna becomes very dear to you. You read Bhagavad Gita if you can understand, intellectually. As an intellectual giant. Or otherwise, you just Ramayana, Rama, you fall in love with Rama. And then Sri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. You will repeat it with great love. You are repeating and uttering the name of your hero, name of your darling. Okay? The name of your beloved. Rama has become your beloved. This is the reason we also discussed this point. Actually, you should not be conscious of the power of the Lord if you really want to love Him. The last class we discussed that. If you know that God is all powerful, almighty all the time, if you are conscious of that, you will never be able to love Him. Consider God as your friend. Okay? Consider God as your brother. Or consider God as your child also. Vasalya, bhakti, you can cultivate. Develop some kind of relationship, some kind of intimacy with Him, and just actually be free to repeat His name. And you will attain to the highest in this birth itself. So, this instrument is fit to attain that highest experience. So, don't waste your time and energy in frivolous, worldly talk. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa would not encourage anybody to indulge in worldly talk. Anyway, in home and all those places, you talk about only secular things and worldly things. But when you come to here, Dakshineshwar, you would say, at least listen about God and talk about God, okay, all the time. So now, we shall stop here today. Arati starts. We shall meditate for 2 minutes before we disperse. Om